entertained? Are you not entertained? Is this not why you are here?
Hello and welcome to the Bricked Pit. This is the podcast you didn't know you didn't need, where we talk about some very unserious things very seriously. As always, joining me is the one and only Black Hawk to my Gladiator, Josh.
You're reaching today, and Jason is out on assignment.
Yes,
we sent him to Bogota to speak with some kingpin.
That doesn't exist, but he doesn't know that.
So what are we talking about today, Adam, since it's just you and I and there's no one to veto?
That is an excellent point. Since podcasts are known for their visual medium, why don't you tell the listeners what my shirt says right now?
The one that you're taking off now, or?
Yes, that one. Yes.
It says directed by Ridley Scott in a very Ridley Scott-esque font.
That is called the Ridley Scott font, as it turns out. This shirt came into being specifically as a bi-weekly silent protest to our missing third co-host. I saw this shirt for sale and bought it because almost 2.5 years ago, I pitched the idea of doing a Ridley Scott episode, and it has been summarily and I would say wrongly vetoed for a very long time.
So since he's not here to defend himself, I'll go ahead and say his presupposition is that we shouldn't do shows on directors that are alive. But Ridley Scott will die one day, and so we will be like first to press on the retrospective.
We're gonna be really, really sad about that if this happens between recording and airtime. I will.
No, because we'll be first to press.
First to press. So Ridley Scott is probably, if not my favorite director, very high up there. I know you like absolutes. So I will say he's my favorite director.
I just want people to commit to something, man.
Commit. All right, I commit. He is my favorite director.
He's no Paul Thomas Anderson, but
fair enough.
I like Ridley Scott. He's not even my favorite genre director.
That's interesting. I can't. So I had a hard time when as I was saying that. My thinking was, I'm not sure if he's my favorite director or happens to direct a lot of my favorite movies.
That's a fair point.
Which is not necessarily I don't know if it's his direction that I love or that the movies he chooses to do I actually just happen to really like.
Scott, he occupies one of those kind of nebulous zones. He has aspects of auteur, but I wouldn't call him an auteur.
Yeah,
he's craftsman. I would say more than a genre director. So he's very old school, well-rounded director.
Been at it for a very long time.
Maybe one day he'll have a hit. You never know.
You never know. Well, it's funny you should say that. So, he's directed 29 movies, produced dozens and dozens more. His movies have received 44 Academy Award nominations and 65 BAFTAs. He's been nominated for Best Director 3 times. I think you and I've received feedback on this, assume sometimes that we throw names out, then they immediately know. But people should know him from our long and deep discussion about Blade Runner, which we did on our Robots episode, I think.
I don't even remember talking about Blade Runner, to be honest.
It's all right. So Blade Runner, as I've said in several previous episodes, is probably I'll commit, is my favorite movie of all time. I'll be more committed, Josh.
That means you lied in our last episode where we talked about...
No, I said that it was. I said that it was, but of the movies that I haven't already talked about.
I get it. You're a liar. That's fine.
Fine. I just lied to you is what it is. But some other ones that, folks may know is Alien, right? I think that's probably the broadest appeal one. Gladiator, Black Hawk Down, Thelma and Louise, Napoleon that came out. And also the Gladiator 2 is coming out very soon in November of 2024. Despite some of our friends' odd hatred of it and preemptively mad the movie's coming out. Who knows? It could be great.
Around here, we call Gladiator 2 G2 Return to the Euphrates.
G2, even Gier. So fortunately, Gladiator 2 is directed by Ridley Scott, but if they did one of those things where they have the first one sort of a masterpiece and then the second one is a...
James Cameron.
Yeah, it's like... Yeah, there you go. Exactly. As a creative decision, they're going to make Gladiator 2 like a buddy cop film with lots of comedy and slapstick.
Well, the original Gladiator 2 script was stupid. And I'm not sure if it was a Beetlejuice Goes to Hawaii situation where like they purposely made it bad so it wouldn't get made. But apparently people need money now.
To nerd out a little bit, I have this book that I really, really like. I got it last year for my birthday. It's called Future Noir. Very substantial. It's a 500-page book on the making of Blade Runner. It's got all kinds of inside crap. And if you like the movie like I do, it's a neat take. But anyway, in the back of the book, the guy who wrote it interviews Ridley Scott. I'm never going to have any other opportunity to talk about this with any people ever. That's why I'm bringing it up now, because nobody else will care. It talks about the scene with the unicorn. Decker is daydreaming or dreaming, and the unicorn. And one of the things the internet likes to argue about is that piece of it. And of course, so he starts with this basically like, well, of course, that's the biggest clue in the whole movie. That was a deliberate choice. And then it harkens back to Gaff doing the origami unicorn, blah, blah, blah. But he's like, everybody's missing the whole point of this, though. It's not whether or not the dream is important or whatever. It's all about the photographs he's holding before he has the dream. Photographs are a physical representation of memories. And so everything, anyway, so he goes into like all this other symbolism that everybody's been missing the whole time. I don't want to talk about Blade Runner much more extensively than we already have, but that little piece I had read since we recorded that, and I thought it was really interesting to.
So did he say whether or not Decker was a replicant, or
he essentially implies it, yes, that he is, if you read the whole interview, and he talks about all the clues. But he says the fun of it is that you ultimately leave it up to the viewer. And this book came out before 2049 came out. But
my take on it is it doesn't matter, because
that's good too. Yeah.
At the end of the day, the real humans, the people that were really feeling things, were the replicants anyway. I mean, right. Roy Batty was not a good dude, but he was very human. He had human drive. It's like that's a really Philip K. Dickian thing about like what is human, and as we get into the age of AI, that it's pretty important.
Well, that Tyrell, do you remember the Tyrell Corporation motto, which is more human than human?
Also a Rob Zombie song,
which predates the film and the book. There's a lot of his movies. There's also a lot of his other things. Like I didn't know that he very prolific. His production company produces all kinds of famous things that people. Other media, so like for example, Man in the High Castle on Netflix. Like he was both director and producer of that.
Also a Philip K. Dick novel.
Yeah, that's why I mentioned it. The other thing is that Apple commercial, the famous Apple commercial. Right. The way he got his start in production doing film was he had a first commercial business doing thousands of commercials for local markets in Britain. It's interesting because he also has sort of like the family business. In some ways, his older brother, Frank, also did production stuff, was a major contributor to things like that. He died very young from skin cancer. His brother, slightly more famous than his older brother, his younger brother is Tony Scott. Unfortunately, he committed suicide, and that really affected Ridley. They were business partners and brothers, and they would work together very closely. They were working on a project when Tony took his life. It's a strange thing that I don't particularly like Tony Scott's independent works. At least not nearly as much as I like Ridley Scott stuff.
We'll name drop a few for the folks at home.
Beverly Hills Cops 2.
That's not a bad sequel.
But I don't like it as much as like
Beverly Hills Cop 3.
Right. Spy Game, Man on Fire.
Man on Fire was decent.
The Good Wife. So he and Ridley both produced that as well. Anyway, he did a lot of commercials and other things too. Ridley's works tend to be, like you said, more auteur, I guess, or pseudo intellectual, I guess.
I don't know about that. He's
trying too hard. Is that your opinion?
No, not at all. He's more skilled, and not that Tony was bad at all. He was very much. I would say.
I mean, you can say bad things about him, Josh. He's not going to know.
Try not to speak ill of the dead. So, and since at some point in time someone will listen to this and Ridley Scott will be dead, I won't say anything bad about him either.
In any case, Ridley Scott has just made a ton of media that I just absolutely love. But there's a few movies specifically that I want to talk about. They're all action, but they're all sort of different genres and different tastes of filmography. And they're also some of his most award-winning films. We could talk about anyone you want to talk about, or any other that you want to talk about too, Josh? I'm not, because Jason's not here. We didn't have to do an outline and pre-rehearsal and sound check. We're just winging this on the fly, which is why the episode is so much cooler.
I mean, those were claims you just made.
Yeah, we need you to, if you've never shared one of our episodes ever, let it be this one. So the numbers just go off the charts, and I can point to it and be like, see, no preparation is the best preparation.
I mean, I think we should talk about Alien a little. Have we talked about Alien? I have like...
Who cares? Jason's not here to tell us. We can do whatever we want. Let's talk about the movies we talked about last week. Jason can't stop us.
So I heard Ridley Scott watched Magnolia.
I heard that it was his favorite movie. If you were to say something like that, why would you suspect it might be Ridley Scott's favorite movie, Josh?
Let's speculate why he thinks our favorite movies are his favorite movies.
And then let's send him a tape of us doing that and see what happens next. He'll be our very first celebrity guest after that.
He will have to get in line with all the other celebrity guests that we have.
You know, a good thing, an easy way to get celebrities' autographs is the restraining orders.
I like to send them fan mail on death certificates.
Prank call. Wrong number. Anyway, so I'll start with mine, and then you can just jump in whenever you want. So I guess we'll go in time order.
Also known as chronological.
Chronological order. Thanks. Man, without that Sir Ridley Scott direction from you just then, I would have sounded like a fool, Josh.
From those of us operating on the higher order.
Chronological. I'm going to write that down and look it up later. My first movie is Gladiator, which came out in 2000 and had a larger-than-life impact on me in that it was one of the movies that I went to see many times in theater, and there's not been very many of those. It was who I was with. I was young. I got to hang out with, a lot of really cool people who some suddenly liked things I liked as well, which wasn't always a given.
And it was in the height of the first Chronaissance.
That's right.
We're in Chronaissance 2 now, which is different, and apparently just exorcism movies that are unrelated to each other.
He's got a fetish or something. I don't know.
This was the height of the crowing.
As Josh may have given away the farm here, that it stars Russell Crowe and Joaquin Phoenix. It does. Also, the soundtrack to this movie has like our high school played this as their like concert for the year. My friends who were all band geeks, I heard them practice the theme songs to Gladiator no fewer than 200 million times.
We when I worked for a hockey team, it was ECHL. It wasn't like I was like with the Maple Leaves or something, but pump up.
You were the Zamboni driver.
So anyway, they to pump up the crowd and stuff, you have like, it's like you do the Braveheart bit, and then there was a ton of clips that from Gladiator, because it's pretty
to get the audience correct. Yeah, it had a moment. I think it's certainly less popular with people who were born since then, but it had a moment in time for 5 or 6 years where it was very quotable and it was memed a lot, and it's still memed. I mean, there's still like
it was like
all kinds of things.
Fast and the Furious was memeable as Napoleon Dynamite.
That's a funny analogy, but yeah, I'll accept that. It's basically an action movie about a gladiator who was in the Gallic Wars through very dubious retellings of Roman history, which are mostly not true, the way the films depict it. We can actually talk about that really quick. Ridley Scott.
Oh, Ridley Scott addressed this?
I'll just take a quick aside. This movie is not historically accurate. A movie Ridley Scott just did is Napoleon.
It's also
which I watched.
Accurate.
Not always. Not. I mean, there were people named these things, whatever. But so he got a little. There were people who were like, "This is crap" because it's not historically accurate about specifically Napoleon. And he's like, "I'm not here to be a historian. Historians exist for the purpose of being historians. I'm here to make entertainment, and I choose to make the things." He goes, "I compress timelines. I expand on things that were very minor but seemed interesting." He says, "That's that's using the natural world to create better art. If you want to watch a documentary, go watch a documentary. There's plenty that exists, but that's not what I'm doing." And it's interesting because I'm one of those nitpickers, and you are too. It's the premise of the brick pit in some ways. It's like if there's a thing that a crap about, if if you are a Roman historian,
then we totally give things a pass just because we like it.
So that's what I was going to say. It's like, for whatever reason, Ridley Scott gets a pass, because when I was watching Napoleon, I had to turn off my brain because I studied French history. So it's not like I don't know these things. If I want to enjoy anything on its just merits, then I have to do that. But Gladiator, much the same way, very little, but it had a lot of cool inventions about the mythos of gladiators, and it actually got me really interested in, as every man apparently, according to TikTok, does, Roman history and the Roman Empire.
My supposition about gladiatorial arts. My conjecture. It's like a conspiracy theory because I don't think anybody's trying to cover this up. But like most of the gladiators didn't die, and they had minor lacerations and stuff to make them bleed and like make everybody go crazy. That's pro wrestling. They were out there juicing. Like I think it was all the work because you had popular people. They sold dolls of them and stuff. I think and people made. I think that was the genesis of pro wrestling is the gladiatorial.
It's a fair take, and I think you're right. Real. I think there's evidence that backs up that while there were. Well, here's the other thing. All right, we're talking about a span of hundreds of years. There's a lot of change in the art of gladiator.
I'm just talking about the gladiator pay-per-views. I can't. That's right. I can't talk about the house shows. I would.
Right. To your point, that you're right. It would be foolish to have an excellent crowd-drawing fighter that stands the risk of dying in real life. Right. You want to fix the fights. In any case, the reason it's fascinating to me not is because it's non-historical. There's a couple things. It came out in 2000, so it's relatively old now, but it stands up on a technical level. Mm-hmm. And by that, I mean, I think it won one of its Academy Awards on this category, which is for sound mixing, specifically the way that they do a lot of the like battle scenes and the marching scenes. There's an early, like right at the beginning of the film, if anyone has a really great home sound system they want to test out, this is a perfect movie for it. With the Atmos, it's like it was made for that. I know that's a really nerdy thing to talk about, but it's just such a cool thing for me to hear.
Well, Saving Private Ryan, the Normandy scene is also a good. That's what always. I don't have surround sound anymore because I have kids. And it used to be because they were young, and now that they're like teenagers, they're like, turn it up. It's like now they back talk. Yeah. It's just like not worth it to even have surround sound.
Yes, I empathize. I understand completely. I've decided that some fights are worth fighting, and this is one of them. So
I found their fights worth fighting, but I don't somehow never win.
Yeah, well, I didn't say win. I'm still fighting.
It's what Tolkien called the long defeat.
It's funny you should say that because the joke about the long defeat is kind of what they imply. The arc of the movie in The Gladiator is he's fighting this long defeat, essentially, is that he has one objective, which is to kill his captors and get back to his family, but they're already dead. Right. So there's no winning. And the only way he can see them is to die, essentially, is the way he sees it.
To the Elysian Fields.
To the Elysian Fields, yeah. It's just the music's, it's a Hans Zimmer soundtrack. There's just a lot about, for me, this is a really, really weird movie in that I like the visuals and I like the direction and I like all the cinematography, but it's really the sounds. Mm-hmm. I like this, just closing my eyes and just listening to the music and the sounds and the mixing. It's just it's one of those weird, cool things.
And didn't what's his name die during the production? They had to change some of the script around. Cause he was like a notorious drunk, and he was like partying.
Oh yeah, you know what?
Stuff. Oh, by the way, this is not to confuse the 1992 Gladiator with Cuba Gooding Jr. and James Marshall, which just came up when I was trying to search. that was a bad. And Google says, is Gladiator 1992 a good movie? Let's see what it says. Predictable boxing movie, but a lot of fun. No, that's a lie.
This is how we know that the AI will never win. They can't objectively determine.
Oliver Reed died 3 weeks before principal photography ended.
This is why I know this story, is because what allegedly happened is that he encountered some sailors from the Royal Navy on shore leave. They supposedly challenged him to a drinking match, and of course, like you said, he was a notorious alcoholic. He died of alcohol poisoning. Like, he drank himself to death in that bar in real time. But yeah, that is true. On that note,
on that fun
note, the next one I want to talk about is another.
That's all you got to say about Gladiator? You like the sound?
I like the thing that brings. Well, we could talk about like the plot of it and the writing and all the. Joaquin Phoenix was the least crazy I've ever seen him, and
he was really good. Now I think that was put him on the map. I think more than anything else. I think Gladiator was a huge hit, a great story. Tragedy. Obviously, he ends up dying at the end after getting his revenge. Very Western plot. The battle scenes are good. The beginning, like when he's in charge of the army, and
yeah, that's very good.
Flaming arrows and stuff, which I don't.
The giant flaming balls. Yeah.
But again, rule of cool. I don't care if I don't like something. I will belittle every tiny mistake. But just like my life, if it's a total mess, I will excuse it all day on arbitrary grounds, and that is the true brick pit.
The secret of the brick pit. This is gonna be like in our retrospective in an unaired episode in 2024. Josh confided.
Cuts to me like leaving some hotel, like the hotel linen got shot out of in front of me, like covering my face. No comment. Brick pit mania had waned.
The boys were officially free to go outside without fear again. They caught their stalkers. The
podcast dropped from 20 to 3 people.
Yeah, that's how it all ended. There, they'll play this clip. That'll never happen.
It all happened.
Jason's gonna listen to this and just sigh really loudly the whole time.
To a second of this. He'll hit the 5-second skip ahead to see if he hears his name.
Well, that's good. Let's talk for about another 5 minutes, and then we'll just trash him for the rest of the hour, and then we'll close on like.
So you wanted to talk about more Ridley Scott films. Let me ask you seriously. So we set up you like action films, you like kind of popcorny.
Yeah.
Gladiator is above average genre film. It was nominated for Academy Awards and stuff. It's a good film. What in that though can you point to and say that there he is. There's Ridley peeking through.
Honestly, I know I keep harping on it, but honestly the sound mixing, the attention to detail with the sound in this movie is really where it's at.
Okay.
There's some filmography things that are definitely like, an example of that is the way the action, like you were talking about at the beginning where they're finding the Germans, the way those action shots look. He has a specific way that he does big action sequences. He did it in Napoleon. I'm not saying that it's like indistinguishable from other directors, but I'm saying if you showed me a out of nowhere clip of some big battle sequence, gave me 30 seconds of it, I could probably tell you if he was involved in the shooting or not.
And some of it is just feel, like familiarity, and like you can watch a Michael Bay action sequence and pretty much
they have a look to him.
If it's not Michael Bay, it's somebody emulating him.
Yeah, trying to ape him. I don't have any real criticisms of it as a movie like you described, like just a above average popcorn film. I think it's just even though it's a tragedy, basically, it's still just a fun movie. It's also got a lot of hidden humor and gallows humor and stuff like that in it, which I also enjoy. But we don't have to keep beating a dead horse.
The Roman Empire's dead, man.
The Roman Empire's dead. Did you say you want to talk about Alien? You think that's a good one?
I mean, we can, but I mean, you got a little agenda, so let's.
Unlike other people who may or may not have been on this show, I don't have to hit every note.
The issue with a lot of these films, like Ridley Scott films, they're pretty layered, even for action films.
Not all. Look, to be fair, he has some stinkers too. I mean, they're not all.
We're
golden.
That's right.
Okay.
Right on your list.
Oh, is it?
Oh, yeah.
You're saying you don't like G.I. Jane? I don't either. That's
actually G.I. Jane was pretty good.
I would disagree. Okay, fine. We'll do another one of his terrible ones. Someone Watch Over Me.
Never seen it.
Yeah, you're not missing anything.
Well, we'll just touch on Alien. Alien had the cultural impact of Gladiator times 10. Obviously, it spawned 8 gazillion. It spawned multiple franchises at this point. It is such a well-crafted horror film that it's a lot of subtext about male rape and stuff like that. Which is why I think dudes went in to look for some, and they're like, oh my god, there was lots of yonic and phallic imagery thanks to Geiger, done in. Am I lying?
You're saying.
There's nothing that aggravates me more than when I say something completely serious and people laugh. Like
it's because your sincerity is so.
My sincerity is hilarious.
No, your sincerity is disquieting, which makes people laugh out of nervousness. You cut me off. I was trying to say something.
It makes me sound like I'm a serial killer.
I'm not saying you're not. I've always thought of it as a significant film because it puts a female protagonist in a role that's not requiring her to be saved by a male colleague. I think that's a really cool early choice, 1979. Also, not for nothing, but Sigourney Weaver slaps in this movie. Like she kicks the butt. I mean, it's just a good. It's like you said with Gladiator. I think it applies to this one as well. It is the Roman Empire of space. It's the right. It's just a good. It's a layered action film that has more depth and more. A lot of the Marvel crap that our friend, who I won't name by name, loves, but seems to hate Gladiator, doesn't understand is that those Marvel movies have no true stakes. Like you very rarely feel as a panoply of movies. There's not like a lot of true
films in general are just they're movies. They're not films, and that's fine.
Yeah. And a lot of action, like Fast and Furious action movies, are just movies. They're not films.
And they're not.
Ridley Scott makes action movies that have stakes. I think that's what for most part, not again, and we're painting with a broad brush. But
right. Well, and I think one of my criticisms of Scott overall would be, especially in terms of Alien, is he's gone to the well too many times.
Gotta get that money, brother. I mean, that's boys gotta eat.
When I went to his house, it was almost as nice as mine, so I get it.
Not everyone could be a podcaster.
Right. I tell these guys all the time, I'm like, look, I mean, you make the movies, but I make fun of the movies that you make. So who's really the loser here?
Right.
He delved too deep into the white spaces.
He pulled what we called a George Lucas.
Yeah, I would say that his revelations are probably more satisfying, even though they're ultimately fall flat than Lucas.
We've talked about this a lot. Anytime you take an IP and you just beat it to death, every time you add to it, you dilute it. Mm-hmm. Very rarely do you have some kind of IP where you add to it and it concentrates it. That's not generally the way it works with movies. There are, however, the corollary to that is Blade Runner, which he produced but didn't direct. 2049. I don't feel like that diluted the property. I feel like that actually contributed to it.
Well, yeah, and it's as long as we're not when we get the Blade Runner Saturday morning cartoon.
Yeah. Well, they did do an anime. It didn't do well, so it didn't succeed very long. But it's not Indiana Jones 5, right? That's kind of the example, or The Last Jedi, where they've stretched this so thinly just to wring an extra dollar out of it. Like that's the worst, Yeah. So he's definitely guilty of that in Alien and the whole. But I think that's partially not his. I mean, he's cashing the checks, but he's not seeking work. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I'm not going to ascribe meaning to his life, but
right.
It may be a case of they're going to do this with or without me. I might as well have some control over it.
Get a paycheck.
It's always about money with you.
It's always about money with everybody.
Oh man!
You think I would do this podcast for free?
Why do you think I do a podcast for 40 people listening, man? 39. That's dropping in real time in the future. We haven't put this episode up. See, that's movie magic. We're saying this like it's already together, and the listeners at home don't realize that this was recorded sometime in the past. So what do you want? You want to talk about after Alien?
We'll stick in space, I think, for a hot minute and go with The Martian. So here's my deal with that. I really liked the book. I enjoyed Andy Weir's roadshow, and I'm sure you're familiar with the story where he was basically writing it for free on a blog over the course of several years, and it kind of went a fan. It came out. He was writing chapters every 10 weeks or something. it came out like serials and like Sherlock Holmes, where it would come out in drips and drabs over years. He built over that period of time a fan base of 100,000 people were subscribed to his little newsletter or whatever. And every 10 weeks he'd drop a new chapter of this book. The publishers saw he basically, after he finished it, he decided to indie publish the book. I can't remember who published it, Simon Schuster or something, but they picked it up very quickly and it became almost immediately, the rights were sold for what became the Martian film directed by Ridley Scott. So I had an affinity for Andy Weir before he ruined it by making a bunch of extra crap books that were just terrible, but tried to ride that fame too long. He should have went out. He stopped one and done. Artemis is a terrible book.
Should have been a Kill a Mockingbird situation.
Pulled a Harper Lee. Just get the hell out. Drop the mic and never come back. That's what he should have done. I mean, they're not like his other books are unreadable, but they're just not. They don't have the same punch.
So here is, I've read the book. I've seen the movie.
Mm-hmm.
I did not care for the book, and the movie was an adaptation of that book.
Did you have your lawyer write that for you? What, you're looking down and you took off your glasses and then put the rim in your...
I think it was pretty clear what I was saying. That I did not like the movie because it was an adaptation of the book.
This will make for an interesting conversation because you're wrong.
No.
And by the end of this conversation, you'll say, you know what, Adam, you were right.
Probably not. I love sci-fi. I love Robinson Crusoe on Mars type stories and stuff.
Yes.
That's what this is. It's got, realistic science behind it and stuff. I really, really, really hated the voice in which the story was told, to the point where it made me not enjoy the story, which I otherwise would have. The things that everybody praised about, just how cussy he was and flippant, just, I couldn't.
But that's the way you sound.
Well, I don't want to read. I don't want to read about me on Mars because I would just.
I hear your voice when I read that book. That's.
I honestly don't. I know you're joshing me, but
quite a phrase.
I just, let's science the shit out of this. Like, dude, come on. It just seemed.
So I got to think.
It seemed unnecessary and stilted, and in the movie, it seemed unnecessary and stilted.
I'm trying to extrapolate a little bit here. I feel like when you feel that there's some kind of nerd pandering going on, you take it personally. Like, this guy's just writing what he thinks nerds talk like, or something like you get personally offended.
Yes.
But Andy Weir is a true nerd. Like, it's not like he was writing as an outsider. I mean,
I don't know.
And his character's voice sounds
I don't believe it. Andy Weir would have beat me up in school.
Have you seen Andy Weir?
Have you seen me? Look, there is a lot of that to it, and it's a flaw. I
don't understand that. Like, I'm able, okay, let me give a quick example that's kind of a good analogy. In the Expendables movies, the first one, let's just forget the others were made, existed to ostensibly poke fun at the concept of all the movies those guys were in together.
Right.
Or existed independently of each other, rather. The joke was overt. It wasn't even like subtext. It was like, we're just going to make fun of ourselves and the people who like these movies, including you watching this movie.
They're hilarious.
Yes.
That's not what Andy.
What I'm saying is that for nerd stuff, that's not that. For nerd stuff, I don't mind that they don't get it exactly right. I find the connection to even if tenuous, the connection to the concept of what nerddom looks like to normies. I appreciate the effort. That's what I'm saying.
I don't.
I know you don't. I have very strong different opinions on this.
Well, I do. I've got a chip on my shoulder from, I carry around the baggage of my childhood.
Because yours has to do with like the outsider aspect of it, the jokes at your expense and the trauma that's associated with growing up as an adolescent with classic geekdom, right?
Right. I don't like a bunch of Johnny Cool guys coming in
and stealing your stuff that you love.
And they're like,
they discovered Lord of the Rings or something.
No,
right?
It's not even that. It's that now that it's cool, when the conquistadors and stuff were like, you didn't want to go to Jamaica back in the day because you got malaria, you died. It was a tough life, but and now people go to Jamaica or whatever. And it's like, partying at the beach. It's like
you have such a complex mentality. Your brain. Like,
How is that complex?
I don't even know how to. It's like
They are playing in my trauma land.
I can see now why Magnolia is your favorite movie. You're a misunderstood soul, is what it is.
I don't even. You're not making sense. I make perfect sense.
That's fine. That's fine. All I'm saying is that objectively,
but specifically with The Martian,
I don't know. I don't know what you didn't like. The science was legit. NASA people loved the book. I mean, I found it on a NASA blog.
I literally didn't like The Martian. I didn't like the guy.
The person who's stranded. You hoped he didn't make it. That's what you're saying. The potato fails and he doesn't make it. Is that what?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I know. Every page I turned, I was like, oh, and then he died. I didn't want him to die, but I did not like him.
The hills you die on. That's all I'm saying. How could you not like this better than mediocre piece of literature?
Because I felt like in the book, the narrator, the Martian,
was smarter.
Was mugging to the camera
in
a life or death situation. And that may be a coping mechanism, but it came across as the author was mugging to me as the reader. And so it dissociated me from the narrative, which was good. The science was good. The story was good. There was great tension. But anytime this guy started, it's like Mr. Rogers, right? It was like the author talking. It was like Ready Player One. It was like the author talking to me.
That's funny. So you hate that too, I'm assuming, right?
With a burning passion.
Enjoyed both the book and the movie.
I felt like the narrative was fighting against itself because it was trying to be, hey, look how cool and groovy this guy is, and tell an adventure story. And I found the juxtaposition didn't work.
Yeah, I mean, you're clearly right. I mean, it's not like it was nominated for 7 awards at the Academy Awards that year and voted best movie in several international film festivals.
So Academy Awards now are going to
and the book was an international bestseller.
The Big Bang Theory won award.
Yeah, I think it was fine. It's a fine show too. You can't have
Gilmore Girls won a bunch of awards.
Okay, look, you've gone too far. There's joking, and then there's that. I think it's just you. If it looks like it's catering to nerddom, you immediately don't like it. I think that's what the problem is.
No, that's not true.
Then what do you love that's got the same? You like Rick and Morty? My name
is Bruce. Or no, the Bruce Campbell movie where he plays himself. I can't remember the name of it. I don't know. Name some stuff. I like quality nerd programs. Napoleon Dynamite.
Okay, that is one real example that I think you have said in the past that you do enjoy is Napoleon Dynamite,
and because it comes from a very honest place. When I watch Napoleon Dynamite, I'm like, man, that's stuff that I wouldn't tell people.
That's core trauma. You had to have lived that to know what that is. Right?
And the fact that he's brave enough to put it out there and laugh at it, you're like, man, that's awesome.
Anyway.
And the film was fine. The film was... I'm not a huge Matt Damon fan.
Yeah, I'm usually not either. I'm also not a huge Jeff Daniels fan, except when I am. I think this is one of those great examples where I think we've done movies on books better than movies or whatever, vice versa. My contention with that is that I always try to judge each piece of media independently.
Sure. They're
a lot of people get real upset if you got to pick a horse. Well,
it's an adaptation.
Yes,
it's not a, and we can talk about whether or not it's a good adaptation. I like Lord of the Rings.
Yes, and I like Lord of the Rings books and movies.
That's a nerd thing that I don't mind.
Yeah, I don't think we could be friends if you were like anti. I think that's the final straw.
And that movie takes some strong liberties.
Yeah, and
some that I disagree with, and I still think they're great films.
We're way off topic from Ridley Scott.
So the Martian, I would say that I liked the film better than the book.
I like the book better than the film for what it's worth. I thought they took out too much of the science in the movie because there was a lot of like nerdy science.
Yes, but how do you put that on screen?
Yeah, I mean, I don't blame. I'm not complaining about it. I'm just saying.
No, I think a hardcore adaptation would have to have been a miniseries.
Yeah,
to get
like Pillars of the Earth when they did that. Like
they shouldn't have time. So I think
which was also a Ridley Scott, by the way. Pillars of the Earth. That was accidental, but it's
the film. They're good performances. It's just I still didn't really like The Martian.
For what it's worth, it's not only is it a good movie, but it's also one of those very neutral like date night movies.
Mm-hmm.
It's short, easy to watch. Turn your brain off, but also has good filmography.
Here's the strengths, and I think the film trade, the crew turning around against orders to go get them, played better in the movie than in the book.
Right.
So there's more inherent drama. The risks were just more real. Like as far as like that kind of stuff, that's like, oh, he's dead. Like the government being like, we're not going back for him.
Wouldn't want to be you.
Yeah, we got another mission. It's like, yeah, that's exactly what. So it did play out very plausible.
Yes.
My main contention is, and I did read the book first, and I think if I would reversed it, I may have liked it better. Yeah. But again, that the voice of the narrator was just incongruent with the situation. And again, I have gallows humor. People like make light of things, serious situations,
but not quite that way. It seemed like I'll be honest. I will concede this to you. You know what it seemed like, and I'll agree with you on this point. Is that the jokes in the book, the non-science stuff that was like plot driving, read like somebody who's never written a novel, like a first-time novelist. It really did have that kind of amateurish aspects to it, which is a fair criticism because it was true. Unfortunately, he swung that pendulum too far the other direction in his future work. Like his editor got better or something because it's just like soulless. Like
it's too novel-y.
It's just too bland. Artemis is I was very excited when that book came out because I liked The Martian so much. It was like the first new. You know what I really like? Now I was thinking about it. The thing I really liked about The Martian was it was the first new science fiction-y short airport read that I had read and liked in a long time. There's a lot of stuff that comes out of here, and it's like everybody's trying to push the limits on what esoteric means. Like everybody that's producing any kind of good science fiction are doing so with a vision of doing like a 12-part series, and so they write 1,000-page books, and that they know they're going to be 4 other sequels to. I don't enjoy that as much as I enjoyed just sitting down in an afternoon and reading The Martian. Like it took no energy or effort. Right? I mean, because I've reached
ringing endorsement.
Look, I'm not. I mean, it is what it is. It is the perfect armchair book. It took no time to read.
It's a summer reading book. It's a beach book, poolside book.
I've gotten to an age where like I appreciate wild and complex literature and movies and Art Nouveau stuff, but
sometimes you ain't got time for it.
I'd never have any more time. So like all the stuff I've consumed, other than the things that you guys recommended on the podcast, but like in my day-to-day life, I'm watching a movie. It's almost certainly The Martian or The Gladiator. It's something very simple popcorn. I don't have to focus on it. I just need to turn my brain off.
Low stakes.
Yes.
I mean, like low engagement. Anyway, I'm sorry I don't like your little movie.
That's okay. Last and sort of in the opposite direction is when before I had kids, watched this movie come out and theaters. I also read this book, which is Black Hawk Down. It is based very closely on a true story, although in the way Ridley Scott seems to get true stories wrong. This was probably of his military action dramas. This is probably his closest to truth.
Or military people view it inoffensively, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Like, because
they don't hate it, they don't love it. They just say this is pretty accurate.
And some of them really like it, but you want to talk about accuracy, like. Like military guys watching and girls watching military films, man, they will chew it up if it's not accurate. And this is a film that they're like, You see how he did
so
that?
He says in something, I told so this quote about the inaccuracy of Napoleon. I think the difference for this one was families of the men who died or predicted die or shown dying in this were still alive.
Yeah.
Ridley Scott's cognizant of that fact that he's somewhat making a true to life documentary with embellishments, and those have to do service to the people whose families are still like present in the world. For those who don't know, it's a story of in the 1990s, early 1990s in Somalia, there was a famine, and the Clinton administration, backed by the UN, sent a peacekeeping mission down to Somalia to try to quell this violence, and that included things like food aid and things like that. And it ultimately failed because the local militia leaders created such trouble that the UN couldn't basically maintain control, and like the militias were stealing all the food and et cetera, et cetera. So the long short of it is
a story that is still playing out to this day.
Yes. So the long short of it is that the U.S. decides to send in the 3rd Battalion Delta Force, which is U.S. Rangers, to go in and reestablish control, make sure food's being distributed, and also capture the local leaders of the militia there to destabilize the group so that there's a chance for... So they go in to capture this guy, or the team of his bad guys. They go in to capture this guy. It's in downtown Mogadishu. The way they do it is dramatically presented on screen. It's probably my second favorite to Spielberg's Saving Private Ryan on the beaches, in that the action sequence from the moment they... Like the code word is the moment in the movie is the code word to execute the order is Irene. And so when they get to go, they're all yelling Irene over the radio and it's playing the music, it's just like, it's like the Apocalypse Now scene. It has that impact on me. It's just a really good depiction of what it's like to be in combat like that. Things go sideways in real life and in the movie, in that one of the Black Hawk helicopters that was escorting the mission was shot down by an RPG, crashes, but there's survivors. There's U.S. Rangers on the ground who survive. One of them gets kidnapped, drugged off by the militants. And so Rangers who are present, the Delta Force and Rangers who are at the base go on a rescue mission to get this guy back, essentially. But it's also, they're trying to get out of the city alive. Like once things go sideways, they're trying to get out alive in a place where the number of guns is like 6 to 1 in Mogadishu to people, right? They just have unlimited weapons and ammunition. They're getting fired at all night long. It's a super dramatic. It's also one of the movies that once the action starts at that scene, which it doesn't take long to get there to the Black Hawk Down. Once the helicopter crashes, from that point on, there's just constant action. It's like Mad Max Fury Road. It's just an assault of the senses. Like you said, our friends who are military, it's one of their favorite movies. That's actually that's where I first became appreciative of the film. In the town that I used to live in, there was a lot of veterans who were in my neighborhood. They were re-screening this at the local theater, and I took some friends of mine who were military to see this on their recommendation that we go watch it. And that's when I started to see it kind of through their eyes. I'm not a service member or whatever, but like you said, they don't hate it. like there's problems with it as there would be, but it's a fairly innocuous. It's also one of the situations where there's like the actions of the U.S. are undeniably right. Vietnam War movies are, there's always controversy whether that, but the U.S. was ostensibly trying to do the right thing.
But it was controversial. That's what I appreciate. Sitting in the military was an escalation that a lot of people were not a fan of, and then having soldiers killed was not universe. In hindsight, I think history has softened it, but at the time, which is one of the things I found interesting about the film, is that military people seem to be at least okay with it, if not really like it. It's in a weird way very politically neutral. In what I recall, at least in my circles at the time, was it 2001 when this came out?
Around that, yeah.
Right after Bush got in, right? So like there was political unrest.
Well, it was released 2 months after 9/11.
Well, there you go. So
it had all the overtures of patriotism and
right, but it somehow manages to be non-political.
Yeah.
Even though it is,
that is true. It doesn't take a side. It doesn't justify the actions. It doesn't glorify them, but it also doesn't
right
paint them with some kind of. Yeah.
It doesn't. I wouldn't say it's like it's not propagandist.
Right. That's a great way. Yeah, I feel that way.
It is very. And again, I think but you could still have painted. They could have gone either way with it. They could have gone very cynical with it. And here comes the U.S. Screwing things up. More that they've already.
It's kind of more matter of fact. I mean, it does have almost a documentary-esque element to it. That's
matter of fact is pretty much, and that's what's amazing about it.
Now that I'm thinking through it,
all the stuff, and it is very matter of fact.
And to kind of beat that a little more, as you may recall, there's a scene, I forget the two characters' names, but there's a scene where one of them, it's in between, they're fighting this fight, they come back, it's in a break in the fighting, and these two characters talking, and he goes, do you really believe in all this crap or whatever? Like, why are we even here? He does the classic military, why are we here speech. And the ranger looks at him and he goes, essentially says, it doesn't matter, we're here to do a job, and you're here to protect the guy next to you.
Right.
Like, it's just that, and that's kind of the viewpoint of the movie. Whether this is right, whether this is wrong, doesn't really matter. This is just watching guys who have a job to do. Ethics or morals be damned. They're just going to get the job done,
right?
Because because they have no other choice. That's why we're here, right?
And at that point in time, it's like that's not the time or place.
Yeah. So you asked me last episode if there's any movies that make me cry, and there's a scene in this. The first couple of times I saw it, contextually, mind you, that were choke up scenes for me. That really get to you because you develop an affinity for the characters and the fight and the struggle. But also, I think for me, is because they were real people. These are not based off of fiction. These are based off of real entities. Now, there were some amalgamations of people, like one guy played two people in real, that kind of thing. There's some real struggle in this movie, and it was well acted, and it's convincing. So it touches me in that way. Also, as far as like pure action movies, this is one of the best, in my opinion. It just does not stop. Also has one of my favorite lines in it, which is, it's got Ewan McGregor in it. And he's got a scene where he's talking about, basically he's taking the intake and doing as the new soldiers arrive, and he's typing them out. Mm-hmm. And they're like, essentially they're asking, how'd you end up in here with the air conditioner and stuff? And he goes, I have magic powers. And they're like, what? And he's like, can you type? Like that was the gist of it. I'm badly paraphrasing that. But
I think a film that like could kind of like I felt like was going for this and probably didn't do the same kind of job of as
Major Payne.
Yes. Major Payne was too real. Major Payne is the G.I. Jane of Wayans Brothers military comedies. A film to compare this to is John Krasinski's 13 Hours. That was about Benghazi.
Fascinating. Yeah.
I think that is because it's kind of the same, Yeah. Because Benghazi was not non-politically charged.
Correct. And much more recent in time.
Yeah, that was a 13 Hours is a Michael Bay film about the attack on the consulate in Benghazi back during the Obama administration. I think that first. But it has shades of Black Hawk Down, and so like the two movies and
it took a point of view.
It is a Michael Bay film versus a Ridley Scott film.
Which is funny that we should have sort of hearkened to him already in this episode because it doesn't it doesn't mean to belittle the whatever of Benghazi, but it's like if you show up in a clown uniform to a eulogy. It's you know what I mean? Like no matter what your thoughts are of the dead guy, that's not the right action. So that's really what it felt like to me. Like this is the theme and the tenor of this is wrong.
Yeah, it was. Whereas Ridley Scott, like I said, I think he took care because there were survivors and survivors' families.
And Michael Bay was like, "How big was the check?"
Michael Bay was probably like, "This when it happened."
Like at the premiere, he's like, so it's like, "Did you talk to any of the survivors?" He's like, "What are you talking about?" Survivors of what?
I don't understand why we can't film in Benghazi.
That's right. Could go on location for this thing is very important for the
that may be unfair to Michael Bay, but I think the film fails to keep neutral, which is
maybe if we talk enough crap about him, he'll show up and be on the show.
Oh yeah. He'll come boxes like he's Huey Bolt.
He could be like, you don't know, Josh. He could be like Nixon and call in anonymously to radio shows and talk about how good he is.
He'll show up on Laugh-In.
This former disgraced president doesn't narrow it down.
90% of our audience don't even get that reference. We're aging out of the few people.
That's right.
Sock it to me. All right, so we just scratched the surface of Ridley Scott. Obviously, that he is in a story, and will continue to have a story from this point forward for years to come. Hopefully, that
I encourage everyone to see Gladiator 2.
By the time this airs, we hope he is very well. We hope this epistle finds him well.
Hell and hearty. That's what we want to hear.
This is not a jinx or
nope. Put that. No, don't speak that evil, Josh. Don't speak that evil into the universe.
I don't think I've ever heard any actors say oh, he's a jerk.
No. So actually, that's in the book, in the Future Noir book, it actually talks about how his relationships with actors has evolved over time. Mm-hmm. Russell Crowe really liked him, and one of the things he said about him was that what he appreciated was he let actors be actors. He said that he was very, very interested in the craft and art of the way the actors bring to the roles. So to compare that for listeners to other ones, like the Coen brothers, never changed a script. No actor has successfully, as far as I know, ever changed a word of any script they've written. Whereas Ridley Scott will be willing to, and there's nothing to say that one's wrong or one's right. It just does a juxtaposition.
It's different approaches.
Yes, different approaches. So, but as a result of that, actors also like that Ridley Scott's willing to take their input and say, well, let's say that line a different way. And Harrison Ford famously talks about this when he was filming Blade Runner. He had notes about how the character was going to be done. And Ridley says, I don't need to review them, just show me. And and he's like, I'll take them where I want. We'll do it my way. We'll do it your way. I'll go with what's best. He didn't bring that sort of uncompromising ego. The Coen brothers also have that ego because they've earned it, right?
The type of films that the Coen brothers make are very dependent on precise speech. I introduced O Brother to my oldest last week, in fact, and that's a thing that really stands out, especially in that film, is how precise the language is and the performances. It's not an actor's film. That is a director writer's film.
Yes.
Inside Llewellyn Davis, probably not so much. So they run the gambit. But anyway, we're talking about Ridley Scott. He's a cool guy. I like how that Roy Batty said, I ain't saying all these words. I'm just going to say a couple of these words. And how that one guy said, I just do the eyes. Low Pan just does the eyes.
Low Pan just does the eyes. Man, I would wear the shit out of that shirt. I got my Ridley Scott shirt, but I would wear my Low Pan just does the eyes shirt all the time.
Whenever I get out to LA, I'm going to make Patrick from Vintage Video take me to the Bradbury Building, because
that's cool.
It's like some of my favorite films have and TV
centered around that. Yeah. You know what we should do? In fact, I'm going to call it right now.
We should do a cruise.
We should do a
brick pit cruise.
Everyone should buy into our timeshare.
Join us for a live recording of the Brick Pit on the sea. It'll be a river cruise down the Mississippi. It's going to be like from the mouth of the Mississippi River, like down to like the jumbly bits of Louisiana that are all swamp.
But it never makes it to New Orleans. There's no part of it where you get off and go do something fun.
We'll circle 3 or 4 oil rigs and resupply them, because that's how. Actually, we're just going to get jobs resupplying oil rigs, and you can come with us.
Come visit us on the oil rig. What I'm going to say is the next time Jason isn't able to record with us, hopefully very soon, is we're going to do a James Hong episode.
Heck yeah.
Who is also hale and hearty and no bad mojo to him, and it's all fine, even though he's 95 years old. He has been in all kinds of stuff, and it's been on my mind actually to pitch this for a while now, but I know Jason won't like it. James Hong is such a cool dude. For those who are tracking, it's Lo Pan and the Chinese fella that does the eyes in Blade Runner. Just a cool character actor. So
yeah,
that's what we're doing next time. So James Hong movies.
Well, where can people reach us if they want to tell us how much better this episode was without Jason?
We would actually love to hear that. You can send us to Jason directly. He checks the email at brickpit@gmail.com. You can also find us on Linktree/BrickPit to find all our socials and everywhere else you can contact us. As always, we're very grateful for those of you who stuck around this far. Hopefully you finished mowing the lawn and can get back in the house now.
It's hot out there. Stay hydrated.
Stay hydrated. Until next time, this is the Brick Pit.